Welcome to the TOCA Backstage podcast. Join TOCA's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Hi, this is Chris Wolf, Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation, with another edition of TOCA Backstage. It is my extreme honor to have Mr. Eric Buss from
Hello.
Shenanigans, which will be on Sunday, April 16th at the Armstrong Theater with two shows at 2 and 7 p.m. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Can't wait to come back.
So yeah, we had you back, and we had you once. We had the show once, and to my recollection, it got off to a rocky start.
It was a disaster, and it was not my fault.
That is true. For those of you that don't know, there was a big car accident out front of the theater, like I think just before the show started. 10
minutes before showtime, all the power went out. Yeah.
Yeah.
They hit the power grid somehow.
So there was no lights, no sound, no nothing. But I have to say, bravo to you and your cast, because A, you didn't run out of the building screaming, and you went out into the theater and tried to entertain people with no lights.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was insane. We had, I don't know, 7 or 8 of us with the crew backstage, and everyone is looking at me, including you, Chris. Okay, Eric, what do you want to do? And I went, I don't know. But there was the emergency lights were on in the theater. And so if somebody was standing on stage, the audience could see them. And so we just said, hey, let's do the best show we can. And we started, and I'm good with the improv. I can play around, I can goof off, and I know the audience is on our side. So it didn't stress me out too much until the lights went back on 15 minutes into the show. And now my brain had to switch from fun improv, disaster show to we got to do the show that they paid to do. So my brain had to switch from that to let's get back on track. We have the lights, the sound, the whole thing. What do we go back and do properly? What do we skip over? And it was a stressful but very fun show. But I'd say 15 minutes into the show, we actually got back on track and did the show as planned. The crazy thing that I didn't find out until later was one of the people in that car accident was my nephew by marriage coming to the show. And he was driving to the theater. He was T-boned by someone else. And I think the guy who caused the accident may have had a stroke or a heart attack while he was driving, I think, if I remember correctly. He T-boned my nephew. So my nephew came into the show about 20 minutes late with glass in his hair from the car, and he was completely dizzy. He was thrown off, but he still made it into the show. And if you remember, Chris, there was some sort of firefighters banquet happening in the same building. So he tells the story. His car was hit, and then not 30 seconds later, like 20 firefighters came running out of the building to check. And it was just lucky enough that they were having some sort of dinner banquet right next door. So yeah, we got this story, multiple different angles. And then my nephew was like, yep, I was the one hit in the car. And then he came to the show. So yeah, that was a stressful day, but we made it work somehow.
All that aside, the one coming up in April, on April 16th, will be a whole different experience, right? I mean,
yes.
not only will there be electricity from the get-go, knock on wood, but yes, you have a whole new cast. Tell me about who you're bringing this time.
We do. Michael Rayner is one of my good friends, and he is consistently one of the funniest guys. And what I love about him is he is funny for both kids and adults. You always see somebody that's going to make the adults laugh or the kids laugh. Michael is making everyone laugh. He's kind of a juggler, but he's kind of an improv artist, and he just is off the wall, high energy. He's yelling a lot. He brings a ton of props, and he balances a wheelbarrow on his face, a crash cymbal. He spins hamburgers on umbrellas. He balances shoes from the audience. In fact, the audience members can win money. If he cannot balance your shoe on his face, you win money. So Michael is just a huge hit wherever I see him go. And so I love working with him. So he'll be there. Bonnie Gordon is a fantastic singer here in Los Angeles, and she's also part of the Star Trek Prodigy show. She is the voice of the animated the computer in the spaceship. So she's got a little bit of fame coming her way. She's a great voice actress, great singer, and she also has some funny songs. She's going to be doing a song about Shenanigans, the show itself, as well as she has a song all about the freeways in Los Angeles, which is a very fun song, and it's a niche crowd. For only Los Angeles people will understand that show. And she's going to play, not co-host with me, but she'll be on and off stage singing and goofing around as well. And then Stuart McDonald is flying in from Michigan. He is an award-winning magician who also fooled Penn and Teller. And he does just a short act. It's about 10 minutes, and it's a little Harry Potter-esque, where he is kind of in a haunted house and magic is happening to him. And man, it is a fun show, fun act with a lot of visual things happening throughout. And yeah, he did fool Penn and Teller about 2 seasons ago with his grand finale. So he'll be doing the routine that he fooled Penn and Teller with in the ending of his act. So he's great. I will be bringing my Spring Snake Symphony, which is my big, huge indoor firework-esque routine. And I'll be bringing a bunch of other new routines that I didn't get a chance to do a few years ago. So it's going to be a great show, and we are all very excited.
It sounds like, well, it's like you said, I think it's almost more of a party than a show.
Yes. That is, when I created the show back in 2013, the first place we did it was Tucson, Arizona, my hometown. And that is the appeal that I wanted. The attitude and the feel that I wanted was this, the performers you're watching on stage are also backstage goofing off, having fun. And so you never really know what you're going to see. Somebody might interrupt somebody else's act for a cameo. You might have some tag team performers, whatever. So yes, it is truly a crazy show, and even the pre-show music is a little bit more upbeat than most magic show pre-show music. So I just want people walking in the doors and ready for anything and leaving with a giant smile on their face. So that's the goal.
Awesome. Well, that takes care of one of my questions, because I always like to ask artists what do you want people to walk away from after they see your show? And you just said, so you just want everyone to have a smile on their face.
Yeah, magic is obviously first and foremost. We of course we want to fool the audience. We want to show them magic and have them wowed. But truly, if they are having fun, it's even better. So they will be laughing from the beginning. They will be watching magic and oohed and awed, but also it's also kind of a casual show. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but again, we're all friends on stage, and we're all going to have that attitude of anything can happen and let's have fun. And that goes with the audience. We'll do a meet and greet after the show. And so we'll get to meet people. I think a few people might be, have some merch for sale, some fun stuff, but it'll just be a fun, fast-paced show for all ages, and none of us will be taking ourselves too seriously, and we don't want the audience taking themselves too seriously either. So there you go.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say, well, I have a question. How did you originally get into magic? What was the impetus that put you on that?
I think I was dropped on my head as a kid. It's a good question, which I get all the time, and I wish I had a better answer because it's not that exciting. When I was about 6 or 7, I did get a magic kit for Christmas, and I liked it, and I practiced a little bit. I showed my family and friends, and that's it. I lost the pieces. It didn't really do much more other than that. Then when I was 16, I started working at an Italian restaurant near my high school, and another kid who was already working there was already kind of a part-time professional magician. He was doing birthday party shows on the weekends, and he was my age. So he would teach me magic tricks on our break, and that kind of told me and showed me that magic wasn't just a little kit you get for Christmas. Magic could be taken seriously. It could really fool people. It could blow minds. It could really entertain. And so he showed me a little bit more advanced magic, which I think really sparked the interest in me. At the exact same moment, let's call it a few months, give or take, before or after, another friend was at my house, and he looked over in the corner of my room and said, "Eric, you have magic props. You're into magic? I didn't know that. I'm into magic. I have that. I have this book." And so this friend and I started kind of pairing up and performing together. And our first show together was the church talent show, I believe in 1991. And we did one trick together. Otherwise, we just tag teamed a few of our tricks, but we closed the church talent show, got a standing ovation, as well as then me working at the restaurant and learning other magic tricks from this other magician who was actually better and more experienced than we were. So it was kind of this two things coming from opposite sides. And then I did find out that there was a magic shop in Tucson as well that was also very strong. They had a lot of professional equipment, a lot of beginner equipment. A lot of the magicians in town hung out there. So it was a very nice place to hang out on the weekends. So I found out about all these different things kind of all at once. And that was when I was 16. And I was old enough to know you had to practice, take it seriously. And so I really started practicing at age 16, even though I loved it as a young kid. So there you go.
That I'm curious because from like just being a magician to being a comedy magician, I think there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there has to be a definitive, okay, I'm not going that route, I'm going to go this route, because I could tell you somebody I think you probably know, Sean McMaster, who's a magician,
Yep.
touring performer, cruise ships and whatnot. Back when I was doing shows in Ventura, I met him, and we had mutual friends, and he was trying to do a silk act, to
Okay.
music, which was, fine. I mean, I think everybody goes to that. But then at some point, he said, okay, I'm not going to do that magic. I'm going to do comedy magic. What was the switch for you? Or did you always want to do comedy magic?
Very good question. No, it happened organically, and it kind of also happened in pieces. First of all, my dad was always a very funny guy. He was not a professional entertainer. He was a real estate agent when I was young, and then he was a telephone operator at JCPenney when I was older. He was not very career driven. However, he was very funny, and he was always making our friends and families laugh, and people at school events and birthday parties and all that. He was always kind of the guy making people laugh. So I definitely got that from him. But I remember when I was 5 years old, we were doing some show in kindergarten for the whole school, and the whole school was gathered in the auditorium, and my teacher said, Eric, that teacher over there needs a program. Will you walk this program over to that teacher and give it to him? And I said, yeah, sure. I walk it over in front of all the kids and give it to him. And then I'm walking back and I realize every single person in this room is looking at me. And the whole show had not even started yet, but everyone's looking at me. So just after handing the program, I crossed back over. And when I got to the middle, I wasn't on stage. I was down in the auditorium. But when I got to the middle, I just took a bow and everyone started laughing. And then I kept on crossing over and the show started shortly after that. And the fact that I decided to bow at the last second and it paid off was a huge moment. And I went, oh my God, that was really cool. I just made everyone laugh doing something I wouldn't have thought about doing, 10 seconds earlier. Fast forward to I was 16. And yes, much like Sean McMaster, I was trying to do a dramatic bird act where I produced doves from silk handkerchiefs and candles. And, it was the tuxedo magician, just like Lance Burton in Vegas. And I didn't have any punchlines, no comedy in this act. However, I was doing a live show and I was way ahead in the music. I was ahead by, let's say, a minute, maybe 45 seconds or a minute. So I had to kill time. And the music was jazzy enough that I just started moving and I was only, 17, 18 at this point. So still young enough that the adults were laughing at me. And so I danced a little bit just to let the music catch up to me. And then once it caught up, I went back to the magic. And I thought, oh, wow, I got a strong laugh for that as well. So I tried to keep that dancing in that routine. And then eventually I scrapped that whole routine and started thinking like, how can I perform doves while being funny throughout the entire act? So that started happening as well. And then when I got to college, I became a theater major and I started taking improv classes, doing shows on stage with no magic, as well as coming up with more magic that I could perform for college students. And guess what? College students did not want to watch a serious magician. They wanted to watch a magician making fun of the jocks, bringing up the girls and flirting and whatever. So I had to, I did start coming up with more comedy in college. And that's kind of where I started going, okay, I need to do comedy and magic together forever. So that's kind of where that started.
Do you think that there's a kind of them and us between those people involved in the magic industry, where it's like those who are like serious magicians versus those who are comic magicians?
There can be. I don't feel it on my end, but yes, it's a conversation that comes up all the time. At this point, though, with TikTok and YouTube and social media and just it being, 2023 with everything that's going on, I don't see it as often. But here's the thing. When I do see it, I feel like that person is just rehashing an old argument. I feel it's a lot like politics. You read something on social media and you're like, well, was that a real argument, or did this person start that argument by claiming that it's an old fight or an old argument? So yeah, there's a bit of a rivalry between some magicians. Close-up magicians are very serious, and they're kind of purists. They really like just close-up sleight of hand magic. But all of my idols, successful magicians, were comedians. And I think most good comedy magicians have the respect of other non-comedy magicians. The other thing is unfortunately, in magic, there are a lot of magicians that are not funny, or that are getting laughs through insulting the audience, or, getting somebody up and making fun of them. And so there is kind of a stigma with comedy magicians that we're just going to be, we're going to make fun of people and we're not good magicians and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, those magicians exist. I'd like to think I'm not one of them, and people in my show are not one of them. In fact, I don't even really see those types much, because they don't perform in public often, or, I just don't cross paths with them. So the argument comes from a real honest place, but it's almost, it doesn't even seem relevant anymore. Or maybe we're jaded in LA because we do have really good talent here. At the Magic Castle, you're going to see the best. So it doesn't really happen much. But yes, there is that stigma with comedy magicians, or there is a little bit of a rivalry between close-up magicians, stage magicians, maybe illusionists, comedians. We're all different genres. But when you think about it, we all love the same art form. So it would be kind of like an acoustic guitarist rival with a rock guitarist, rivaled with, a flamenco guitarist. They're all talented guitarists, but sure, they chose their different genre that they fell in love with. So,
and you say your idols. Who are your idols as far as magic and performers?
Well, a lot of my magic idols, some are retired, some are dead. I'm now 48 years old, so I'm talking when I was 16. Who are the big name magicians working? And I had both comedy magician idols as well as illusionist idols, as well as bird act idols, because I did start with a bird act, and I did a bird act for about 10 years into my career. But in no particular order, I'll rattle off names, some of whom you've probably heard of and some maybe not. But Lance Burton was at the top. He was in Las Vegas. Matt King, who's a comedy magician in Las Vegas. Jeff Hobson was a comedy magician in Vegas, now living in Palm Springs. Kevin James, who is more of an illusionist, very creative entertainer. He's all over the world, based in Vegas. Joseph Gabriel was a bird act in Vegas. Ed Alonzo is a comedy illusionist here in Los Angeles. David Williamson was a very funny close-up magician. Michael Amar was a fantastic close-up magician. Those names right there, I could probably come up with a few others, but those were probably the top names for me when I was young, who were consistently working and consistently inspiring me to be funnier, to be better, to, try this, try that. So I don't know if you've heard of any of those people, but those are the people that I looked up to.
Sure, I have. Yeah, of course.
As well as famous comedians, Jon Stewart, Dave Chappelle,
sure.
Jim Gaffigan, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on.
Well, I'm curious, have you it's funny because when I was a kid, I too was like trying to get into magic, and I was doing magic shows. And I was trying to be the serious guy until I never really thought about doing comedy until I saw Topper Martin.
Oh, yes.
And then it was kind
Swedish,
of like,
right?
that was hysterically funny.
Yep.
I don't know if anything of his exists on YouTube, but to those people watching, they should
I
definitely
don't
check it
know.
out.
Yeah, and I think he passed away a while back. I think I saw him live once. And yeah, he was awesome. I think maybe I was a little older when I finally saw him. I believe he was Swedish, wasn't he?
I don't know, but he was just
Oh.
just the first like 3 minutes of him taking bows was
Yeah.
just hysterical.
And if you don't know who he is, he was wearing a tuxedo, and he just had stuff falling out of the tuxedo the entire act.
Yeah.
But after a minute, you're thinking, how does any of that fit in his tuxedo? And how is he controlling it that only this falls out, then this falls out, then this falls out? But it just keeps happening over and over. And it just turns into this ridiculous act. I don't even think he ever gets to a trick because it all is just falling out of his tuxedo. Oh, yeah, I love him.
So how did you decide? I mean, because I imagine, like you said, there's tons of talent in LA. You're a very well respected and connected performer. How did you pick the group that you're bringing this time? Because I know last time you had a juggler, I think you had another magician. They were all great people, and now a whole different show. What is your curatorial process?
Well, I've always loved jugglers. In fact, before I got serious into magic, and this is just another chapter that convolutes the other story, I was going to the old magic shop in Tucson that then closed, and then there was a new one that I really hung out at. But the old one, I was going there to buy juggling equipment when I was 15. And because I was a juggler before I was a magician. And when I got there, I actually found a magic book that I bought instead of juggling equipment. And that was also part of the other, all around the same time when I was about 16, 15. So I've always loved juggling. I love good jugglers. I happen to know a bunch of good jugglers. So I personally always love a good juggler within a magic show. And at magic conventions, when the audience is full of magicians and we watch the stage shows, the juggler always steals the show and brings the house down. So if I'm going to produce a show, I always like to have a juggler or some sort of variety act, but preferably a juggler in the show. So there's that. I want that chunk to be a juggler. And I also, because I started with a bird act, and because I said Lance Burton and Joseph Gabriel were dove acts as well, I don't need to have a dove act specifically, especially since in 2023, dove acts are few and far between. But I do love a good silent act. And for people that might not know what that means, just an act of about 10 minutes long where the music is playing and the magician performs choreographed to the music with no talking. I've always loved those type of acts as well. And just because it is, 2023 and it is what it is, there's not that many of those types of acts anymore because corporate, venues want you to do a full 45 minutes. A cruise ship wants you to do a full 45 minutes. Comedy clubs, etc. So those silent acts, I think, aren't as popular as they used to be, which kind of makes me want to watch them even more. So Stuart McDonald and I got to know each other very well when we both competed a few years ago in 2018 at FISM, which is the Olympics of Magic held in a different country every 3 years. And Busan, Korea was where it was in 2018. And Stuart and I both decided to sign up, go through the preliminary contest where we both actually got accepted to compete in the Olympics at FISM. And because we were kind of on this journey together, we got to know each other a lot better, kept in touch, sent each other videos. So I fell in love with watching his act progress. And just between you and me, he did better than me at the contest. He kicked butt at the contest. He has won lots of different awards with this act. So you definitely want to see it. But I respected him because he is doing that old silent act. So, but even, you know, a few years before when we did the show earlier, same rules applied. I wanted an act where it was just to music, maybe 10 or 12 minutes, even 8 minutes. I wanted some sort of comedy juggler, and maybe somebody in between, maybe a magician that uses music that also does comedy. So that is kind of what I'm looking for when I'm producing this show. And I have close friends who do magic similar to me in that they are doing talking magic and they're doing comedy magic. And they say, Eric, why haven't you booked me in Shenanigans yet? And I say, because you do exactly what I'm doing in that show. And I want to be that guy doing the show, the comedy and the talking. And anyone else I bring in, I want them to be doing something different. So that's kind of how I curate the show. And then you specifically wanted a woman, as I did as well. And there are some fantastic women magicians coming up these days. It is a male-dominated art form, unfortunately, but nowadays there are a lot of magicians. And although Bonnie is a good friend of mine as well. She's been working at the Magic Castle in numerous different ways throughout the many years. She plays lots of different characters. She sings. She has a few venues in LA that she sings at regularly, as well as the Star Trek thing that I mentioned. So she's very busy doing a lot of like conventions and the cons. She's bouncing around doing Star Trek conventions, but she's also a very funny actress and very funny singer. So she is just going to kind of break it up even more than the magic and the juggling, and just to do some quick, simple songs, even the kids can get into, that the lyrics will be fun and simple. She may sing a little bit of an overture for the Shenanigans show itself. We might have her helping out on stage. She's just kind of fun to be around. So I'm very excited to have her back in the show as well. And like I said, no magic. She'll be just kind of a character and a presence in the show.
Well, and just for full disclosure, the reason I had suggested a woman was for the same reason you mentioned, is that it is a male-dominated industry, and I think, you know, showing good representation is
Absolutely
important. And I quite frankly, I haven't seen many women magicians. I know there. I saw Melinda, I think, in Vegas once. Is that who that was?
Oh, many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
But I
probably
think
retired at this point.
I think that they're out there. It doesn't seem to get a chance much because everybody's expecting a male magician. So I thought it would be good to have, you know.
And I agree 100%. And truth be told, and not to disrespect Bonnie or anything, I did ask a few female magicians who were unfortunately busy that date and they were not able to do it. But again, Bonnie is wonderful and I'm very excited she'll be joining us. But I'm also trying to keep my eye on different female magicians to book in the show, and when it eventually works, it will be wonderful. But Bonnie's awesome.
I have no doubt, and I wasn't trying to discount Bonnie at all. I was just
no, certainly.
Yeah,
nor am I.
So again, the show is Sunday, April 16th at 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So you have two chances to see it. Yep. So if you got soccer during the day, they can bring the kids at night, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a family show, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely,
for everybody.
Both shows are family shows. You know, I love little kids in the show. If they're about 5 years old, if they're well behaved, if they're with their parents, I love young kids like that in the show. I don't know if infants are going to understand the magic and the comedy. You might leave the infants home, or if they're going to sleep through the show, that's fine too. We won't turn anyone away, I don't think. But yeah, I think it's definitely good for five and up. And like I said, Michael Rayner is hilarious for even the young kids. Stuart McDonald's act is kind of spooky magic, but certainly not scary, and a little Harry Potter-esque. So that's a really fun act as well. So I think it will be a good show for absolutely all ages. Yeah.
Well, and if for no other reason, they have to come and see your big finale with the spring snake.
Exactly. Yes. And maybe they can clean up after the show.
Yeah. That's always the high point of an audience member.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, Shenanigans, Sunday, April 16th, 2 and 7 at the Armstrong Theater.
Be there.
I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chris. We're looking forward to it. Talk to you soon.